So welcome everyone. My name is Candice Tester. I'm the Group Commercial Director at CACI and delighted to be chairing the session we have today. It's great to see that so many people could join us in these sweltering temperatures, and they're probably adding to the logistic challenges across the UK and beyond as today. In terms of the next 50 minutes, we have some esteemed speakers lined up for you. So in terms of the agenda, we're going to keep you alert and run a quick interactive poll in the chat just beforehand. Then Paul Dorsey from CACI will cover 5 reasons that efficiencies in logistics is key. We'll then introduce HERE Technologies, who have been a long-standing partner of CACI and are a crucial ingredient in the CACI solutions that we provide to a wide range of consumer and logistics brands, and part of why CACI is able to do amazing things with data in logistics. Paul Dorsey will then again focus on innovation at CACI and how we are driving value for our clients, before DX will provide a client success story about how they're using CACI logistics solutions in anger. So, without further ado, if you could just open the Zoom chat, if you're able to, on your screens, and then please just type in one of the letters here. So I'm looking for you to define the biggest problem you are facing in logistics today by using the letters below. So A, fuel prices, B, cost of living, C, driver shortages, D, the move to EV, E, harnessing the power of data, or F, something else. Please feel free to use multiple letters. You may not be able to see the overall results, but we'll all present them back at the end of the session today. So I'm just going to give 30 seconds for people to put answers in the chat. I can see some C's coming through, some A and B. So fuel prices, cost of living, driver shortages, so far seem to be key. C again, driver shortages. E, harnessing the power of data. So we'll do a poll and we'll do a summary of those as we're coming through. Just give it another minute for anybody else to add some into the chat. Okay, looks like the first 3 are going to be popular. Okay, moving to the next slide then. So over to the speakers today. Our first speaker will be Dieter Wohlmann, who is a Senior Product Manager of Location Data Services at HERE. And we've had a partnership with HERE at CACI for over 30 years. Paul Dorsey is a Director of our Logistics Solutions at CACI, and he has a particular focus on our great data and software solutions. And then finally, I'm delighted to announce that Steve Beskerby and James Wood, who together are bringing logistics to life through their own challenges and how they are solving them at DX, a huge logistics company we all rely on to receive goods from the many brands we interact with on a daily basis. But just before we start, welcome to Paul, who is going to talk about some of the current challenges in logistics. Over to you, Paul.
Thank you very much, Candice. I'm not going to take up a lot of time doing this, partly because I don't think it's huge news for everybody, because everyone's very aware of quite how much logistics is headline news. It hasn't been for years and years, but it seems to be much more headline grabbing now. So I've just got 5 really key reasons why right now efficiency in logistics is more important than it's ever been. Okay, the first reason: fuel prices are at a record high, profits are down as a result if you're in the logistics industry, and that's causing challenges. Number 2, the cost of living crisis. Now, CACI, other parts of CACI outside our logistics division do a lot of work in understanding consumers, consumer spend, what's going on in the marketplace. And the research that we're doing right now is showing that more than 2/3 of consumers are reducing spend in some way. And it's different in different sectors, but generally what that means is, depending on what sector you're in, the demand for logistics services is going down. So you've got higher costs, lower demand, eating away there. And as of recent times, we've all know that we've come through a Brexit, we've come through COVID, and they were contributing factors, if not the only factors, to the huge driver shortage that really was headline news last year. It's not quite so much in the headlines now, but it hasn't gone away. And because it hasn't gone away, it's still causing massive challenges to recruit, retain, train, and therefore to drivers, and therefore it's again more expensive. So costs are going up and difficult to meet customer obligations. Okay. Number 3, I hope you can see the high-res photography there, that you've got a truck that's belching out some quite nasty black stuff into the world on the road there. And essentially, commercial vehicles, of all of the CO2 emissions going on globally, commercial vehicles, so not public transport, not cars, just trucks and vans, are responsible for about 7% of those CO2 emissions. So it's a huge, huge amount that's going on. In parallel with that, partly as a result of COVID, consumers are now voting with their feet a little bit more, and they're more likely to be buying from companies with green-friendly policies. Okay, so if you're not adhering to green-friendly policies, you're likely to make yourself a little bit less popular with Mr. Consumer. And if those aren't big reasons for you, then legislation is pushing towards a move for electric vehicles anyway. I guess one kind of saving grace is that if you're already focused on efficiency and emissions tend to have a very high correlation. So if you're becoming more efficient, you're generally emitting less carbon. But this is also clearly a very large problem out there in the world of logistics now. And the last problem is that, and we speak to clients all the time, end user logistics, third party logistics companies, all the way across the end to end of the sector. And what we're seeing is that data-driven decision making is essential. And there was a very nice study that came out last year called From Bricks to Clicks, and it showed that 98% of third-party logistics companies are saying that improved data-driven decision making is essential. And I assert that, having worked with logistics companies for a very long time, the sector doesn't tend to be quite as technologically advanced as some other sectors, and therefore it becomes even more important to pay attention to this area. Okay, so that's me. I'm going to pass you over now to one of CACI's very close associates, Here Technologies, and Dieter Wollmann. And Dieter's going to talk to you about the really essential foundation for so many logistic solutions, which is the really high quality, really wide ranging mapping data, and why that's quite so important. So Dieter, over to you.
Thanks, Paul, for the introduction. Hello, everyone. This is Dieter Wollmann. Yeah, and I'm excited to have the opportunity to talk about our mapping, our data that we offer for routing and navigation. So especially focusing today on what we can do for truck routing. On the next slide, I just want to give a quick introduction into our company, because we are usually, so to say, working under the hood. So you do not see us as a provider of a solution. We're providing map content and services, and then companies like CACI building their solutions on top of that. What you sometimes see from us is our Here logo then appearing in a map, for example, of the application. On this slide, there are a lot of numbers. I just want to highlight a few of them. So here, we are the leading worldwide provider of location data and location services through our platform, which is also recognized from several strategic analysts. Three numbers that I would like to highlight here on the slide. We are in the business since 35 years. So 35 years ago, we started with collecting the first map content. I think it was in San Francisco for one of the first navigation systems in those days. Nowadays, we are now at more than 200 countries where we provide navigable data and all other information that you need for navigation applications, routing applications, logistic applications. And we are powering with our navigation data more than 160 million of cars that are out there. So when you drive a car with an integrated in-dash navigation system, there's quite a high chance that the underlying map is coming from here. Let's move on and talk about the problems that we are solving. So one specific content that we identified that we add on top of our core map routing and navigation content is our truck content. And here we really want to solve problems for truck companies. It's not always, hopefully, about solving this worst case when the truck really get hit at a bridge that is not high enough for this vehicle. But even if you stop the truck before he gets hit and have to drive back for a mile or more and have a detour, this easily adds another half an hour or 1 hour to your driving time and brings you a delay. Or even if you could drive through this bridge but weren't allowed to, or drive through a tunnel where you weren't allowed to, you could get fined for this one. So not talking about the delays in your original logistic plannings. Plus, in addition, trucks have additional specific requirements on places where they get their fuel types and everything else. And for this, we develop a database for truck-oriented products, which are used from our partners in their applications. And this database can be basically divided into 2 aspects. 3 of them are for destinations. We have loading dock locations, for example. We have a database of specific points of interest for trucks, for example, safe parkings, and of course, petrol stations. And we have a database with distance markers that you can identify, for example, breakdown locations better when you're on a highway. And all the other restrictions, which I will talk about in a more few details, are here on the next slides, starting with the legal restrictions. So by driving the roads, collecting all the data for car navigation, we also collect all these signposts that are related for trucks. To start with the general legal restrictions for trucks not allowed, for no good vehicles, trailers not allowed. Very important, the hazardous goods substance restrictions, and of course, also very important, truck-specific speed limits. We have a database that covers all these speed limits as they appear. And even more important, as I said in the beginning, to avoid being stuck in a bridge that is not high enough, we also collect the physical restrictions, be it the height and the weight restrictions and related to bridges, for example. Very important also the maximum allowed weight per axle with restrictions, and of course also length restrictions. So it's quite a large database that our partners then can include. And when they include it in their application, they can also include the different types of hazardous goods, be it explosive, inflammable goods or others, that they can then take into account for calculating the route. And also very important, which we also get here feedback from our customers, the tunnel codes. You know, depending on the material you are transporting, you are not allowed to go through any tunnel and every tunnel, and this could make a big difference in your route planning. Or you go through the tunnel and you could get fined for that, which is also not a good thing. And then, of course, talking about CO2 emission, very important is also the environmental zones or the avoidance of environmental zones. So there are different environmental zones out there in Europe with different types of restrictions and limitations. And then that you can avoid entering there without allowance. We also have a database of these environmental zones as polygons plus the according attributes. And also this can be integrated with, for example, route planning. This map, this is a subset of our, and given an overview of our worldwide coverage, especially for truck restrictions, which is a subset of our navigation data that we have available in more than 200 countries worldwide. And here you see the different levels of coverage. So just to explain here the legend, when we talk about FC, this stands for function class. So function class 1 is a highway and function class 4 is an urban low-level road. And so depending on the function class, we list here our different coverage. So for example, in Central Europe, we have a coverage, a quite very good coverage with down to function class 4. And especially on this 1 to 4 function class, that's where 95% of all truck traffic happens, because you usually do not drive longer distance than the last mile with a heavy truck through urban areas. And so this gives you an indication where our trucked content is available. And so applications using this can also be used. And then this is my final slide, just to mention this. Beside the truck restrictions and the truck attributes, we also have a database and a service that is able to provide toll costs, especially when you have a cross-country route going through Europe. You have to apply quite complex calculations for toll costs, and this can go up to 10% of your overall transportation cost. And so really having visibility of that, or also optimizing the toll cost, this can also help you to increase your profits. Yeah, this was my part. With that, I think, Paul, I hand back over to you.
You do. Dieter, thank you very much. Super interesting. And I think it shows the richness of the data that's available, which is so key to some of the solutions that I'll be talking about, and indeed some of the solutions that that DX will also be talking about towards the end of the presentation. So so thanks very much for that, Dieter. So what I'd like to do is very quickly just introduce a little bit about CACI and CACI Logistics in particular, and why companies work with CACI. But then I'm going to get onto the real meat of my presentation, which is key innovative ways of harnessing technology in order to introduce these efficiencies to logistics setups. So these are, I'm not going to read these all off, but essentially for over 35 years, we've been working in these areas, and these are things that every day we help our customers to achieve. Reducing logistics costs across the board is the key area. But what we're seeing is more and more companies want to become more adaptable with all the change that's happening in the world. They need to be hitting their carbon emissions targets, but they more and more need to use that rich pool of data that's available in order to help make better strategic decisions for their business. And that's where we work. And as I say, alongside here, we've been working with here for the majority of this time, but we've also been working and doing this for over 35 years. So it's something that is ingrained within us. So first off, let's talk about one nice area to look at for increasing efficiencies. And this particular one is all about the final mile. Okay, and it's all about the precision that's required when you want to send a driver directly to a customer's house. So you can see a map on the screen there now. This is in fact in Berkshire. So it's a little cul-de-sac in Berkshire, and you can see right at the end of the cul-de-sac in yellow, the premise location where we would like to send our driver. And when we're planning routes, we go through this process called geocoding, and geocoding takes the address and turns it into a latitude and longitude, which can then be used to precisely send a driver on a map. Okay, but there are issues, and it depends which country you're in, it depends which geography you're in, as to how that gets addressed. And this is specific to the UK, but it needn't be specific to the UK. If there is a requirement somewhere else, there's certainly things that can be addressed in different geographies. But here in the UK, many companies will simply send their driver to a postcode. In this case, the postcode's in the next way. That comes directly from Royal Mail. They use a grid system. That can be enhanced, and we have worked with companies to enhance that data and put it more in towards the middle of the postcode area, but that's still over 100 meters up the road. Competitors get a bit closer. Even Google is a bit closer, but still not precisely where the premise is. So this is an example. If you send your driver right to the door, or right to the building, you're going to be saving quite a lot of time and mileage and frustration, both on the driver side and the customer side. But this is just one example. So we thought, well, okay, we'll work to look to see how relevant this example is across the country. And therefore, what we've done is we've analysed thousands of precise premises against their equivalent postcodes. And what we found is, on average, including the ones where they're right on top of it and including the ones where it might be 3 minutes away, on average, it's 30 seconds away using a postcode or using the precise location. And that equates to 110 meters. And this is all data that can feed into routing systems to help make those routes more efficient. And one of our clients, for example, does this. They're a UK tier 1 retailer. I won't name them. But they do this and have calculated that they actually save in excess of £1.3 million a year purely by using this more precise address data. Okay, I'll move on. Again, another final mile solution that that is very interesting, and this comes from lots of different types of data, but it's all about modeling the more precise time that a delivery driver will need to spend at a home location. And you can see here there are a lot of different bits of data that can all feed into this model, and it's generally going to be unique for each client. So we can do this, but you can look at things like the property type. Is it a house? Is it a block of flats? Is it a terraced house? What's the road like? What's the traffic like in the road? What parking is available? Is there likely to be a driveway? What floor are you needing to deliver to in order for your delivery man to, or delivery person to walk to the front door, or maybe do they need to climb any steps, for example? And all of these things can help feed into a more accurate model of how long you'd need to spend at each one. Again, making your routes more efficient, and in making your routes more efficient, that's going to bring additional savings to you. Okay, so that's number 2. Number 3, this is all about how you actually optimize those routes. So let's assume you've got great data. You've got great navigable road data, as Dieter talked about. You've potentially got those precise addresses. You've got your you've modeled your time at the drops more easily. So here, what we're talking about is actually the optimization algorithms and how you use them. Okay. Now, I'm going to make a bold assumption. All route optimizers are different. I've spoken to many clients before and they say to me, oh, we've got a route optimizer. We're not really interested in another route optimizer. Now, from our experience, having done this for many, many years, we find there is a significant difference. And if you take into account the right algorithms, make sure you've got the right data, give the right level of flexibility, because implementing these systems is just as much an art as it is a science. Going through a detailed implementation and then not ignoring it once you've done that implementation. Keep checking in on it. Make sure bad habits don't creep in. Make sure updates are applied. Make sure you're always making the most of it. With all of those things, you're going to get maximum efficiency. And we know, because we've done this hundreds of times for different customers, we look at customer data and we tend to go head to head. Customers like us to go head to head with our routing systems. For many years, we've worked with a system called Truck Stops, which has been fantastic for us. We've now evolved that to a new system called Pin Routes, and you can see a little screenshot of that in the bottom right. Love to give you a demo. I'm afraid I don't have time now, so if you're interested, please reach out to us. But we've used these systems to go head to head against customers many, many times. And every time we never get beaten on the amount of mileage that we save customers, or the number of vehicles that we save customers. We don't always win the sale, but we've never really been beaten on the actual optimization. So it's such a critical part of what it is that you're doing. Okay. Next up.
Go ahead.
Returns. I'm afraid, sorry, somebody's not got mute on, and I can hear some voices in the background. So could I ask everyone to put mute on their system? Thank you. Okay, so all about returns and the return strategy. So returns is big business at the moment. COVID meant that everyone was being at home, and that increased the amount of online shopping that people were doing even more. And it's caused a big problem for retailers who need to minimize the cost of their returns, because it's a big logistics cost for them. How do they facilitate getting those returns back to the customer, back from the customer? And there are plenty of people who are evidenced as being out there in the world now who actually almost make a practice of intentionally returning stuff. So buying 10 products, knowing they're going to return 7 of them in the first place. So how do you as a logistics provider deal with that? And there are a couple of ways that we think we can help you in an innovative way. And these are those 2 ways. First of all, understand that propensity to return. So how likely are individuals likely to return? And 2, understanding what it costs to return that particular product for each company. And again, there's a lot of ways of doing this, but generally you need to get the right data and model it in the right way to come up with the right insights to hit the return strategy. So For understanding that propensity to return, you can engage with customer segmentation. So, take into account demographics, age groups, income groups, geography, spend, lots of different types of data that then can be mapped against your historic transactional data to analyze and see what patterns emerge. And when you get that, you can start to introduce a predictive demand model. And that predictive demand model can then help you to work out how to change or how to implement your return strategy most effectively to minimize that cost. Okay, so that's a key thing. And on the other side, you've got understanding what it's even costing you. And again, doing that, you need the right data, but in doing the data, you also need to be able to model what it's going to do. So actually modeling getting the products back from the customers in lots of different ways so that you can understand which ways are most effective. And it might be that some ways are more effective and more cost effective for some kinds of customers than others, or for some areas than others, or for some products than others. So once you can do that, again, that's going to feed into your return strategy to help minimize the cost. Okay, and it's big news at the moment, as many of you will be aware. And these are ways where you can use some very, very clever, innovative data analysis to look at having lower returns costs. Okay. And then the last area that I'm going to talk about is the move to the transition to electric vehicles. Now, the big story here, the headline is here, there are so many unknowns. I'm not going to read all of these things out because I'm sure that many of you are aware of these unknowns, but essentially you're faced with very, very quickly changing technology with battery power, with recharge times, with numbers of charge points and locations. It's how much will it cost to make the transition? How much will it cost to run when you do? What will your savings be made because electric vehicles are more efficient? All of these things are very, very key to understand. Now, that gives you all of these unknowns. But when you're faced with these unknowns, how do you deal with it? Now, you deal with it by trying to get as much certainty as possible. Certainty comes from data-driven insights. Okay, gut feel plays a part, and we're certainly not going to dismiss that, but certainty comes from data-driven insights. With these data-driven insights, then so where do you get the data-driven insights from? You get those from modeling. You get those from taking data, the right data, whether it's the locations of the charging points, whether it's the technology of the vehicles, the costs of the vehicles, your customer databases, putting all of these things together and many more into the right model so that you can understand things like what would happen if we moved to these kinds of vehicles? What would happen if we moved now as opposed to in 2 years' time? What would the costs be? All of these kind of things. And to do that, you need the appropriate software, you need the appropriate data, and you need the appropriate expertise. But with the right blend, it helps to start bring certainty to you, to give you those insights, to help you move to electric vehicles and address a lot of the challenges that brings more effectively with more confidence that you're making the right decisions. Okay, so I've given you quite a whistle-stop tour of 5 different areas we think that you can be innovative and address some of these efficiency challenges. I'm now going to pass over to Steve and James from DX, and they can talk to you about how they use technology to help their customers every day. So over to you, Steve.
Brilliant. Thanks, Paul. If you could click on to the next slide for me. Thanks, everybody. So just to introduce myself, my name is Steve Escoby. I'm an account director for DX and been with the company for 7 years. So DX, established in 1975, offers a wide variety of services and products that I'll cover over the next few slides. Built across 2 divisions, our DX Freight division and our DX Express division. And together we offer, as I said, a wide variety of services from small parcels through to mailables, large agricultural tyres, and essentially everything in between. So on the slide in front of you, you can see our DX Freight division. So just to drip through the services quickly. So our DX one-man service is primarily a B2B service to the threshold, again, covering a variety of industries but typically small boxes through to industrial parts, etc. Again, across a variety of industries. Two-man DX two-man is our room of choice, typically B2C, so into customers or clients' homes, with again additional services offered: packaging removal, wet fit, light assembly, light installation, etc. Our logistics division, again, probably one of the most varieties in terms of the services that we offer, from warehousing, dedicated solutions, hybrid with our either our B2B or our B2C networks. Again, be it delivering a full warehouse racking for a client setting up a new warehouse, through to white goods and furniture into customers' homes. And then finally on this slide, our international elements. So we've got a wide variety of partners across the world and across Europe that we exchange goods with every day to connect us into that international marketplace. So in our Express division, again, two main elements: our document exchange service used by most of the solicitors in the UK, effectively dropping documents off at 5 p.m. and getting them in and exchanged between solicitors by 9 a.m. the following morning. Our Express division also looks like a more traditional small parcel network, again with both B2B and B2C elements, business to business and business to customer. Again, key focuses on certain industries. So optical would be a big industry for us as well. And you can see some stats in terms of the number of locations, exchanges, vehicles on the slide there. On the next slide, you can see our extensive network. So we're the largest network of its kind in the UK, with 83 sites and growing. And those sites are primarily a mixture of our own in-house depots, dedicated customer-specific locations that can include cross-dock points, as well as 180,000 square foot warehouse dedicated to particular clients. And we do that, and we have that network, and we continue to invest in that network to be both close to our customers and close to our customer clients. Again, being closer means that we can drive down stem mileage and really push the fuel efficiency and reduce the fuel usage that we have, which is a key factor for our customers. And talking about our customers, this is a very small snapshot of some of our key customers across each of the divisions. Again, various solutions which James will come on to talk about, deployed, both dedicated hybrid solutions as well as network solutions. Again, some of these customers are squarely rooted in moving to a transition to a more of a sustainable vehicle. In terms of electric, is the favourite one currently, and we're taking that journey and supporting the customers with that journey. And other customers aren't ready to take that step yet. So that gives you a bit of a flavour about DX, and I'll hand over to James to talk to you about solution design.
Good morning, everyone. I'm James Wood. I'm head of solutions here at DX, and I just wanted to talk a little bit about how we actually use CACI in day-to-day operations, and also from a strategic point of view. So realistically, in daily operations, I'm going to make reference to DX two-man here. Every single consignment that actually goes out on the road on a daily basis is actually planned through CACI truck stops. This gives us a number of different things. It drives productivity on the vehicles that we've actually got out on the road, without a question of a doubt. And as productivity is actually driven, efficiency is driven, lower carbon emissions, so on and so forth. But the second thing it actually gives us is estimated times of arrival. Now, the kind of product that we're actually talking about here, it's large, it's bulky, it's, as Steve made reference to earlier on, a lot of these are washing machines and dishwashers where we're actually doing wet fits on. There could be sofas, it could be garden furniture. It's not the type of thing that you can leave behind the bin if somebody's not in. Let's put it that way. So ETA compliance to us is absolutely key. We plan everything through truck stops. It gives us an ETA for every single consignment, and then what we do is we communicate that out to the customers, so the customers know within a 2-hour window exactly when we're going to be there. This is key for us, as I've said, and we hit somewhere in the region of around in excess of 97.5% compliance on ETAs, on everything that's actually out on the road on a daily basis. So from a daily point of view, the truck stops application is absolutely key to us. And if you could move on a slide, the other thing that we actually use truck stops for is solution design. So this is where we've got a potential customer or even an existing customer. Well, what we'll do is we'll actually go through the period of discovery. We'll actually have a look at their data. We'll have a look at the profile. We'll have a look at the fall to earth. We'll have a look at the nature of the product, if there's any type of assembly or wet fit or so on and so forth. And we'll actually determine what's the best solution for that individual customer. Now, Steve made reference earlier on to hybrid solution designs. And a lot of what this is this will be customers who have a fairly hefty fall to earth in a fairly restricted area. And then the rest of the deliveries, which could be north of Scotland, it could be Cornwall, it could be Norfolk, potentially go out via network. Now, the dedicated aspect of that would mean dedicated vehicles, usually in the customer's livery, with drivers in uniforms with the customer's brand on it. And what this is doing is this is driving brand awareness. It's enhancing the customer experience, but it's also driving efficiency. And it's driving efficiency through data-driven solutions. Now, I know that Paul mentioned data-driven solutions earlier on. I've practically got it tattooed somewhere. It's something that we actually feel very, very strongly about. Paul also mentioned earlier on about gut feel. Gut feel generally tends to be right, but when it's backed up with data, it becomes irrefutable. So when we're actually looking at solution designs, the solution that we actually use is the CACI truck stop solution. So we'll analyze the data, we'll put all of the data through the optimization, and it'll come back with the amount of routes, the areas that we actually need to focus on, and so on and so forth. So just a little bit of insight in there to what we actually do. So once we've actually got to the position, we've gone through the discovery aspect of it, we'll design the solution. Our in-house IT team will then integrate with the customer, and we'll project manage it right through to the period where it actually goes live, and I can hand it over to business as usual to someone like my colleague Steve. And just the slide that you're actually looking at now is just a little bit of analysis that we've actually done. So you can see heat maps where the volume of data is going to, profiles of customers' accounts, and zonal balances that we could potentially put in for a customer as well. So I hope that gives you a little bit of insight into how we actually use the CACI solutions that we've got currently and have been working with for quite a period of time. So like I say, and if you've got any questions, then you can use the chat function.
Thank you.
You guys.
Yeah, thank you for that. That was brilliant. I, for one, definitely want to see your tattoo of data-driven solutions. But I do agree, and often in life, it's both an art and a science, and data to back up solutions is absolutely fabulous. So without further ado, has anybody got any questions from the webinar at all? Please either type in the chat or come off mute. Well, I've got one. So in terms of the routing software, is it just a solution design or everyday use? You've talked about both there.
Yeah, it's both. The truck stop solution that we actually use for daily operations is exactly the same solution that I actually use when I'm talking about when I do solution design. So there's consistency across both daily operations and the solutions that I'm actually producing. So when we actually make the transition and we put a solution live for a customer, it's the solution that I've actually used to plan that's also the solution that's actually going to be used for daily operations.
Great, thank you. One for you, Paul, perhaps, because we talked a lot about the data. Is there any countries that, is it just UK or is it global? Is there any countries where the solutions don't work?
Sure. So I think the solutions that we work with can work in every country, but they do depend on good quality data. And good quality data, as we've seen from listening to, or as we've heard from listening to Dieter, it's available almost everywhere. There are a very few countries that it's quite difficult to get data in, such as North Korea, for example, for relatively obvious political reasons. If someone came to us and said, we need some routing done with great road navigation in North Korea, we may struggle. But short of countries in that kind of ballpark, we can do pretty much anywhere. There are different things that need to be taken into account in each country, such as the different addressing systems and the postal coding systems and things like this, and the accuracy that's available. But certainly, pretty much everywhere we can cover.
Thank you, Paul. I've seen a question in the chat for Dieter. How do you keep your map street data up to date, specifically in the UK? I think that question's about, Dieter.
Yeah, so in the UK, we apply this similar approach as in the rest of the world, at least for our core countries. We have local people working in the country. We have an office with field analysts there who permanently drive the roads with cameras in the car and collect the roadside signs and other information, road geometry and things like that. But they also use a lot of sources to do their daily planning of driving the roads. So we get a lot of probe data, for example, from commercial fleets, where we can identify if something changed in the speed limits. We do have a lot of relations to public traffic authorities who give us information when they change regulations, because they are interested as these changes go fast into also routing and navigation systems. And we work a lot also with satellite imagery, aerial imagery to detect changes in specific areas where we then use for the planning for our on-street driving.
Certainly lots of detail there in terms of validation
of course,
data.
Yep.
So fantastic to hear. Any more questions? Does anybody want to come off mute and ask any questions? Okay, well, I'm just going to bring that to a close then, but I did say I'd summarize the results of the poll this morning. So the overall results show that 40% of people, the biggest problem facing logistics today is fuel prices, followed by 30% saying cost of living, 20% in driver shortage, and 10% in harnessing data. But we didn't get any responses for electric vehicles or other. So certainly those top three are 90% of the responses overall. So it's all about cost overall. Any last questions before I close for the day? Okay, well, on that point, I'd just like to say thank you to our speakers today, Paul Dorsey, Dieter Wollmann, James Wooden and Steve Beskerby. Thank you ever so much for attending and being our speakers today. Very, very enjoyable session. The recording will be sent round to any attendees and a follow-up shortly will be available.